fisheries, this is a fisheries thing. Well, I just read it now.
A third one?
It's right here. It's part of the territorial sea plan.
Oh, the one that,
Yeah.
hi Lisa.
No.
I don't know where that came from. Yeah, normally
Maybe she thinks you're supposed to get it.
I...
Hey, you want me to hand it for you, George? I'll do that.
That's up to the
Oh, did I
chair.
forget my pen?
Doing the housing
I
analysis.
got one.
Yes.
Didn't we have it someplace before? There was that one
Chocolate.
They,
over there.
the firm that we chose for the housing analysis, they have done some work for the city of Astoria.
Well,
Not for the county, but they have for the city of Astoria.
basically it's just this.
Oh, yeah.
In our opinion,
all over
OPEC
Oregon.
plays a critical role in ocean planning and remains the primary means.
I sent this out to the commission late this afternoon.
Yeah, I
Probably.
saw
Lisa's going to bring it forward today.
David's going to speak briefly to the,
Census, so we can tell them, yeah, we agree, it's a great letter. Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, I just read it. Good, thank you. Thanks for coming. Yeah, basically,
You know,
it says that we need to that OPEC plays a critical role in ocean planning and remains the primary means by which a large number of interested groups, as well as the local coastal communities, participate in the planning process. So,
Katie, are you working for the paper today?
They're supposed to be.
And be
None of the
sure and
people I've
mention
been
that it has the
working
reversion of interest clause in it. I just signed it for her. And Kathleen wanted you to be sure and emphasize that it's got that and say where it is. Okay.
And, yeah, there should be 2 or 3 folks from Gobi here, but those aren't the people I've been dealing with. So the people I'm dealing with told me they'd be here. Yeah, no, I know him. Yeah, Karen Wheeler and Kate Allen and Amy Baker are supposed to be here tonight. So, yeah, I have not seen them yet, but we will ask to go be there. And there they are. Okay, we're just talking about you guys.
That'll give them something to pick with. But naive and don't understand, right?
Oh, there's so much stuff going on all the time.
You know, this is the life we asked for, right? We said, sign me up. I want that one.
Social engagements.
Good to meet you. Thank you. You know Commissioner Young. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I thought you did. Went to county college together.
Oh, he's there. Hi, how are you? How are you doing? Good.
Keep me oriented as the time is. I'm telling you.
yesterday was rough.
How are you feeling overall?
Oh my goodness, all day long, just
The crud?
it was nice.
I thought I was.
Break from that. I brought people out.
Reminds me, get out the cough drops now. And I started the choke.
Traffic, I've noticed.
Bill Harshbarger. Bill Harshbarger.
Seemed to get warm today.
Oh, really? Thank you.
Neither can I.
Who is that?
He was one of the founding members of CHICO. So it was volunteer, don't know what.
Oh, wow.
And I've got
Misinterpreted.
Is it the flu?
pulmonary fibrosis.
Just kind of wanted to feel else to go. And the lady, mom was kind of desperate. So, sure. Thanks very much.
Ready, Cam?
Astoria.
Good evening. The Board of Commissioners is the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board is now meeting in regular session. Please join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have the roll call, please?
Here?
Here.
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 Looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have some business from the public tonight. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 3-minute presentation about any item on the agenda except public hearings or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. People wishing to speak during business from the public must fill out and sign a public comment sign-in card. Our first guest tonight, I would like to welcome Tillamook County Commissioner David Yamamoto, who has come far up the coast to visit with us tonight. And welcome, David. And David's going to speak to us, and I'm going to allow David an extra minute if he needs one, beyond the 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Lee and members of the board. For the record, my name is Dave Yamamoto. I'm a Tillamook County Commissioner, and it's a pleasure to be here. It was a beautiful drive this afternoon, and I appreciate very much the opportunity to speak with you today. I understand that you are considering dropping out of the Forest Trust Lands Counties membership, and I'd like to address you on that. I feel it's very important that everyone have a continuing seat at the table. If nothing else, I feel it's extremely important. In order for you to have any kind of say at all, you need to have that seat at the table, and you need to remain at the table. When I just talked to our county treasurer today, and one of the issues that I have is the amount of money that comes into Clatsop County through state forest timber harvest. And I know the numbers for Tillamook County, and I'm sure they're quite similar here in Clatsop County. When we get our state timber revenue, our county treasurer spends many days trying to figure out exactly how much is going to remain in the general fund and how much gets distributed to so many other special districts within the county. And again, I know Tillamook County's numbers very well. I'm sure your numbers are quite similar. But of all the money that gets distributed to Tillamook County, the county general fund keeps less than 30% of the state timber revenue. The rest of the money goes to school districts and our 911 center and the community college and to fire and rescue, our 911 center. The list goes on and on and on. And I'm afraid that your decision, should it occur, to withdraw from the Council of Forest Trust Lands and losing that seat at the table, you're leaving your special districts who really do get the vast majority of the money that comes to Clatsop County through timber harvest. You're leaving them without a voice at the table. And that to me should be very concerning to you as permanent members of CFTLAC. And I think it's very important. I have heard that, and Kathleen, you and I work very closely on the FTLAC. I know there are differences among the various members, and I certainly understand that. But I hate to think of the number of times that I have been on the losing end of a vote. And yet you have to be at the table to express your views and to make sure that everyone understands your views. Tillamook County has more state timber forest land than any other county, but it's closely followed, close second, by Clatsop County. And you do have a tremendous amount of state forest land. I know that you have withdrawn from the Lynn County class action lawsuit, and that's perfectly fine. You have that right and ability. But at the same time, one of the things that I find interesting is that should we win this Lynn County class action lawsuit, and things are looking very good right now. Again, this is going to be a long involved process. But should that occur, even though you are no longer a party to the Lynn County class action lawsuit, you will still benefit. Again, it's a $1.4 billion lawsuit against the state of Oregon. Do we even think remotely that the state is going to have that kind of money? Absolutely not. But at the same time, one of the things that may happen is that the state forest lands would come back to the counties that gave that land to the state originally. And at that point, you would have complete control over how you managed your Clatsop, and I'm not sure you call it a Clatsop State Forest. In Tillamook, we have the Tillamook State Forest. But I think that is one of the great things about how this process works. But I feel it's very important that you remain with your seat at the table. Very interesting. Guy Boynton, this is the Guy Boynton meeting room. And yet he was the originator of the Council of Forest Trust Land Council. I mean, it's quite amazing. And I think just for his memory alone, that it's important that this board remain with CFTLAC. I mean, it's just one of those issues where having a seat at the table, being able to express your views to the entire state, I think it's important. And to now opt out, and I know the issue, $11,000 in dues to CFTLAC. I mean, is it a goodly amount of money? Yes, it is. But is that reason to leave your seat at the table? I'm just not sure it is. So again, I appreciate very much, Chair Lee, the opportunity to address you this evening. It's I feel this is an extremely important decision that this board is making this evening. And I would hope that at minimum, you would put this off. I know there are 3 seats on this council, on this commission, that are possibly going to change. And I would hate to see this board make a decision that another board in a few months might regret. And I'm just not sure that's in your best interest. Again, I apologize very much. I am from a totally different county, a different mindset, but I did want to make sure that I addressed you today. If I can have one more minute, Shirley? Sure. Thank you so much. When people look at Tillamook County, and this is a story, and Kathleen, I know you've heard me talk about this story very much. When it comes to clean water and habitat restoration and fish restoration, there is no county that is more advanced than Tillamook County. That's because we've been doing this for a long, long time. Our farming community, our timber community, our fisheries community, our watershed councils do unbelievable work in habitat restoration and fish restoration. We're one of the only counties. We've got 2 river systems in Tillamook County, the Nestucca to the south and the Nehalem to the north, where we have wild coho salmon, an endangered species. We have so many wild coho coming back on a regular basis. ODFW allows a take of wild coho. We're doing something right in Tillamook County. We are. Can we be better? Absolutely. Every county can be better in habitat restoration and species recovery. We can all do so much better, but I think we're on the right track. And I would love to see Clatsop County remain with FTLAC to make sure that you remain at the table. So again, thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it very much.
Thank you, David. Commissioner, thank you.
Our next guest is the Mayor of Warrenton, Mr. Henry Valanciefer. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Lee, Commissioners. The City of Warrenton does not generally address other bodies about issues that don't specifically affect our city. However, in this case, item 60 on your agenda does, we believe. We don't receive timber revenues, but the policies related to timber affect major employers within our city, which also means our constituents. We first learned about the decision to potentially withdraw from the council at the Cedar Board meeting yesterday, and later heard from our timber processing constituents who expressed concern about the long-term effects of the withdrawal. The City of Warrenton does not have a specific position on this at this time. I just want to advise that we are just respectfully requesting additional, a postponement of the decision to learn more about this decision. We also invite you unanimously to meet with us and to find out better ways to improve communication between our boards, as well as find ways to collaborate and be better partners. You have significant amounts of property that we would like to see developed into industrial, jobs and economic development opportunities that I think we can work together on and sustainably work on. And so we just respectfully request a postponement of the decision until we can learn more about it from either staff or one of the commissioners. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next guest tonight is, we're going to do all the forest stuff first, and then we're going to do the voters pamphlet. Our next guest is Roger Dorban. Come on up, Roger. State your name and address for the record, please. Welcome.
Roger Dorban, 462 6th Street, Astoria, Oregon. And I too want to weigh in on the agenda item dealing with the membership in the Council of Forest Trust Lands Counties, only with a completely different point of view. Currently, the taxpayers of Clatsop County are paying in excess of $15,000 annually to be members in the CFTLC. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. However, for years, the CFTLC's representative body, the FTLAC, has pursued goals with the Board of Forestry that are inconsistent with those of our own county. The general consensus among our representatives on the FTLAC has been that Clatsop County's position has been consistently marginalized. Clatsop County is on record in support of balanced forest management, a minimum of 20% high-value conservation, protection of older trees, reevaluation of herbicidal spraying, and its effects on wildlife and clean water. No longer paying dues to the CFTLC does not affect our membership in the Association of Oregon Counties or the FTLAC. It will also send a strong message that can do nothing but strengthen our voice with the Board of Forestry. The FTLAC is currently not advising the Board of Forestry because of the Linn County lawsuit, and therefore not weighing in at all on the management of forests in Oregon. Our county has independently continued dialogue with the Board of Forestry thanks to our Representative Commissioner Sullivan, who has attended their meetings in person to represent our views. A former commissioner was quoted in the Daily Astorian stating, "The commission has a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens of the county," and I couldn't agree more. Don't waste our tax dollars paying dues to an organization that is not representing our interests. Finally, rather than simply voting on this issue, I strongly urge you to put your position in resolution form in order that next year's incoming commissioners will have a current affirmation of the county's longstanding support of balanced forest management. And I think that, just as a final point, the whole point of resisting the Linn County lawsuit was to maintain our position about balanced forest management, because it would appear that if that lawsuit did succeed, that there would be a call for increased logging in state forests, and that might lead to the reduction in conservation forests. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next guest is Jed Arnold. Come on up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Jed Arnold, 834 Erie Avenue, Astoria. Chair Lee and Commissioners, I hope you'll bear with me as I stumble along here. I left my notes at home, so I'm going to try and do this off my phone. As both a resident of Clatsop County and a person employed in the local forest industry, I'd like to make a brief comment about the Commission's intention to consider withdrawing from the Council of Forest Land Trust Counties at tonight's meeting. As you know, Clatsop County has the second most acreage of Board of Forestry lands in the state and receives more Forest Land Trust revenue than any other county in the state. As you're also aware, a substantial portion of our county's employment is dependent, directly or indirectly, on jobs in forestry and the wood products manufacturing. I was therefore concerned to learn that the Board of Commissioners is considering giving up our seat on a body responsible for advocating for the interest of Forest Land Trust counties with the state. Although I understand from the summary document prepared by County Manager Moore, there may be a feeling that decisions reached by this council do not always agree with the priorities of this board, I'm surprised to learn that the proposed solution is to give up the county's voice in the discussion entirely. With so much of the current political climate being dominated by partisanship and an us versus them mentality, I feel it's particularly important for representatives of this county to demonstrate a willingness to engage with parties they may not always agree with. By walking away from this group, you give up your ability to engage with the council on these issues, and by extension, you give up the ability of your constituents to have a say in the management of this important resource. I admit I don't know much about the events that may have contributed to this decision, as there's not a lot of information provided in the agenda summary. I do hope tonight you'll articulate the motivation and research that led to this decision if you choose to make it, including the input of any groups in our community that you sought in advance. Principally, I'd be interested to learn how the best interests of our county residents are served by withdrawing from this group, and what the plan for replacing the function of this council is on the county's interaction with the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next guest is Brian Kidder. Come on up, state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Lee and Commissioners. My name is Brian Kidder. I live at 1558 Jerome Avenue, and I'm here to talk about the voter pamphlet. I don't think that there needs to be any convincing a view of the value of the voter pamphlet for major elections. I know that you work hard refining the information that you put in there, and you know that voters actually read and understand the information. But as much as candidates and their volunteers think that everybody knows that an election is coming and they know all the facts, unless there is a story in the Daily Historian about it, most people don't know there's going to be an election for anything until the ballots show up in the mail. And what happens if they miss that day in the paper? So my point is that off-year elections deserve the same amount of information to voters as major elections do. For the water districts, for the transportation districts, for the yes or no questions that have to come up and be answered in off years, voters deserve as much information as they can when they're voting on a commissioner or a state representative or a governor. And in fact, does it cost money to print a pamphlet? Sure it does. But in my view, the price of democracy would be much higher if we didn't have an informed public. So I would ask you to fund the voter pamphlet in the off years. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next guest is Mary Beth Cote. Connell. Hi, good evening. State your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Cottle, 131 Ross Lane, Cannon Beach. And I'm also here to encourage the voter pamphlet to pass. It is, I would like to just hook on to what he was saying about the voters really needing that information on off years as well as on years. I apologize, I just put a lozenge in my mouth. I know that one of the concerns was the cost to special districts, and I would encourage you to make a decision in enough time that special districts can budget for that cost. And I did bring the cost breakdown from the last meeting that when the county clerk presented. And one of the concerns seemed to be that the smaller districts might not be able to afford the cost of a voter pamphlet. And there were two things that came to me when I was able to look at this information more comprehensively. And one of them was that for the smaller districts, the cost is fairly nominal. Hamlet was brought up a couple of times, and on the information given by the county clerk, their billable, their total chargeable costs invoiced to the district would be $1.03. I'm here to say that I will donate $1.03 if that is what would make it happen for them. But there is also a way for the county to waive that fee if it is truly a hardship for that special district. And so I just really strongly encourage the commissioners to all support this effort to get the voter pamphlet for all years and not just the major years. Thank you very much.
Our next guest tonight is Melissa Osley. Come on up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, I'm Melissa Ousley, 33611 Cullowbee Lake Lane, and I'm also here for the voter pamphlet. I've been here with Indivisible a couple of times to just advocate for the need for that, and so I will just repeat that again. Really appreciate you all entertaining the vote tonight, and we've been talking with voters quite a bit, doing some voter drives, trying to really encourage people to vote, which is so important to our democracy. And the overall consensus that I hear is, being a male voting state, it's so important for people to be able to have that pamphlet with them right there when they've got their ballot, to be able to educate themselves and look through it as they're voting. That process is such a great process, and I feel like as a state we're so ahead of other states in having that. It's so accessible, and I'm proud of our state for having a mail ballot. So thank you for thinking about it. I think it's really important to value the off year or the odd year elections the same way we do the even year. And thanks for thinking about it. So.
Our next guest is B.B. Michael. Is that right? All right. Welcome. State your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is B.B. Michelle, 2864, P.O. Box 2864, Gearhart. I'm also here to ask that the commissioners vote to have a voter's pamphlet in all elections. You know, citizens, we've been told that to be effective, we should think globally, act locally. Well, nothing says this better than to have information for our voters in every election. No election is too small for us not to want to provide the best information for all of our citizens so they consider that when they're voting. We want to encourage people to vote. The pamphlet's an important part of that. So I ask that you all consider that we should be doing this for every election. It's the right thing for our civil engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next guest is Tiffany Mitchell. Tiffany, come on up, state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Mitchell. I reside at 445 Pleasant Avenue here in Astoria, and I bet you can't guess why I'm here. I'm here for the voters pamphlet like everybody else. I'm here to ask that you please vote yes on having a voters pamphlet. It's really hard to follow the acts of everybody before me. Mary Beth Cuddle's excellent analysis about the cost to the special districts. Just the general idea that we really owe this to our citizens and the constituents in this county to be able to have the best information possible. It has been brought up by folks that the voters pamphlet only provides the information that a candidate wishes to present about themselves. But if that's the best way that they have to make their presence known to the people that could possibly vote for them, I think that they deserve that opportunity, and every single candidate deserves that opportunity. In addition, if we have an important measure on the ballot, it's really important for voters to have that information as well. I think that the county would be doing a disservice by not voting for this pamphlet, and I sincerely appreciate your patience with us in every county meeting that we've come to speak to you about this, and that you're finally making a decision, and I certainly hope that you vote yes on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next guest is Eric Halperin. Eric? State your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
My name is Eric Halperin. I live at 661 10th Street in Gearhart. Chairperson Lee and Commissioners, thank you for the time. I also would like to ask you to support having a voter's pamphlet in all the elections. My own personal experience, just as an ordinary citizen, is that any election that comes around, I use the voter's pamphlet as my primary source of information about whatever measures on the ballot and whatever candidates are running for any office. And then I might look for secondary sources in newspapers or wherever else that may be available. But I think that a lot of voters use the voters pamphlet as a primary source. And I think it's important for all the elections. And in today's world of somewhat fractured news sources or people finding their own news, it's nice to have one piece of information that all of the voters have that's the same. So I would encourage you to institute that for the odd years also. Thank you very much for your attention to this matter.
Thank you. Our next guest is Deb Van Ness. Barency, is that right?
Yes.
State your name and address.
Close enough. I'm Deborah Vanas Ferenczi, 90278 Parr Road in Warrenton. Thanks for taking up the matter of the voters pamphlet. I'm here to urge you to vote yes on that. Before I moved to Oregon, my daughter lived here first, and I remember visiting her and being impressed by the mail-in ballots, and also watching her scramble through her house, which is not always in the best of order, to try to find her voter pamphlet. She refused to vote until she had that information. Fast forwarding to last year in 2017, as co-leader of Indivisible North Coast Oregon, I was one of the folks who helped put together the Vote the Future information page so that voters would have some information going into the election. And I can tell you that that page got over 1,000 hits, and that told us that we really needed more than just a volunteer effort, that our voters needed to be informed because democracy depends on informed voters. The pamphlet itself, the process might not be perfect, but it's reliable at a time when people need reliable information. I believe the last time the pamphlet was done in an off-year election was 1999, and the world has changed quite a lot since then. We understand it's a $30,000 expense, but we feel per voter, it's much cheaper to inform our voters and get good representation and engaged voters than the alternative. So thank you, I hope, for voting yes on the voter pamphlet in off-year elections.
Thank you. Our final guest tonight is George McCartan. George, come on up, state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is George McCartan. I live at 490 Franklin Avenue in Astoria. And one of the topics I was going to address was the voter pamphlet, but I think if you're not convinced by now, you never will be. It's only a matter of money, it seems. And though I'm a fiscal conservative, I would say this takes some precedence over some of the other allocations you might make in the budget. And this should certainly go for every election. The second topic I wanted to address was the countywide housing study. And there my fiscal conservatism really comes to bear. I have trouble all the time, not just with this, but with any time a governing body spends substantial amount of money for consultants. I think it has to be questioned very much. And one of the things we have to consider here is on page 65 of the way the print is on the internet. It's task 2, the housing inventory and forecast. It speaks of the county and its partners have to provide local data sources. And the question is, are we really ready to do that? Do we have, in the county or in the cities, do we have a real handle on the housing situation, the vacation rentals, the vacation-owned housing, the rental housing in general? And I'm hoping that we have that all ready to go because they're going to depend on us, and they've indicated they'll just tell us, well, we couldn't do anything there because we didn't have the information from you people. Another question is this is this 75,000 going to go to a study for all kinds of housing? Or at least will the emphasis be on workforce housing, on housing for low income, and housing for the homeless? That's, I think, should be the particular emphasis on this study. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes our business from the public tonight. Now we're going to move on to the consent calendar. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we're going to move on to our first business agenda item. This is item 6A, transfer of property to nonprofit. Serpa, may I have the staff report, please?
Yeah, and I also, if I could, with SERPA tonight, we have 3 representatives from Gobi. Kate Allen, Amy Baker, and Karen Wheeler are also going to come up and provide a little bit of information about what Gobi is hoping to do with this property.
Chair Lee and members of the board, good evening. I am here to ask you to consider a transfer of county-owned property to Greater Oregon Behavioral Health, Inc. It's an Oregon not-for-profit corporation for public benefit providing social services. Little history about this property. We came into title through tax foreclosure last October. It is located off of Agate Street and it is a fourplex. It was built in 1918 and contains over 3,000 square feet and is in need of a cleanup and remodel due to deferred maintenance. And 2 of the units have water damage in there. But it does have good bones, and it is on a bus route, it's close to schools, and it was categorized for other government in December at your board meeting. And there is an Oregon Revised Statute 271330 that allows counties to transfer tax foreclosed parcels to social services. And Greater Oregon Behavioral Health, Inc. is a qualifying not-for-profit corporation providing that public benefit. And the deed that we would use to transfer this would also include a reversion that should it not be used for that specific public use, then it would revert back to Clatsop County. So with that, I will turn over to.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in here before the Gobi folks get started. I know the commissioners are well aware, I think people in the public are probably well aware that Gobi, Greater Oregon Behavioral Health, Inc. Has been a really great partner for the county in terms of trying to address a lot of the needs we have. In particular, the North Coast Crisis Respite Center, which we're coming up on a couple of years of being open, was heavily funded by Gobi, and I lost track of how much money you guys have put into that, but well over $500,000 at this point. So Gobi's been a great partner for the county. I certainly see this as a way that we might be able to continue to work with Gobi and also recognize some of the great financial contributions they've made to our community. So when we acquired this property in October on tax foreclosure, I happened to be aware that Gobi was looking for a property in the county, and nothing had come to mind. But when I saw this property, I thought it might work very well for what they would like to do. And now I'd like to turn it over to them to talk about what they'd like to do with it.
Well, thank you, and good evening, Chair Lee and County Commissioners. I'm a former state employee, so I'm used to saying chair and legislator, so I'll try to change my vernacular. I'm Karen Wheeler, and I work for Gobi as a business development manager, and I've been there for a little over a year, and basically my role is to provide value to the members that we serve in any way that I can, working with any population and sector or internal division within Gobi. So the first thing I started doing when this has been going on for a year, or a little over a year. So the first project that I jumped into was housing, because so many people need housing in our regions. We serve Eastern Oregon and then this region over here through both CCOs, Coordinated Care Organizations. So I began talking with Kate Allen and of course with Amy Baker about potential properties and just talking to anybody, realtors. We've gone through a number of realtors. We've had 3 or so properties slip through our fingers. And so when this opportunity came up through Amy and Cameron, it was a great opportunity to have something that would be a structure that could be rehabbed. So that's basically what we want to do, is rehab this property. And I'll talk a little bit about the funding that we'll use to do that, if you allow us to have this property for this use. We applied for a grant through Oregon Housing and Community Services, and so we received a reservation for funds letter for that. At that time, we were looking at a duplex, so it was priced a little differently at $50,000 per unit, so we applied for $100,000. And then Gobi also put up, Gobi's board voted to also contribute $140,000 for this effort. And so since the first property fell through or was bought out from under us, we went back after finding another fourplex in Seaside and changed our application and applied for $200,000. And so we believe that Oregon Housing and Community Services will grant that request with our revised proposal and our revised budget and pro forma. So we have that underway simultaneously while we talk with you. So they're looking at that right now. So those are the 2 primary sources of funds, and we'll need to collect a little bit more money from doing some fundraising, potentially to cover some of the costs related to the rehab. But the population that this project will serve is extremely needy in this area as well as other parts of the state. The coastal areas in Oregon have had a 2,000% increase in opioid use disorders, and along with other addictions that I'm sure you're aware, I'm sure you've had other people talk with you about this problem. These folks that have been through treatment, that are in early recovery, need a place to live, and they need a safe place to live with their children, and especially if they're pregnant, that's a really vulnerable time for women. So the population to be served in this house or this fourplex would be women who may be pregnant and who may also have children. So I'm going to turn this over to Amy to talk about the services and the need for this population. And I'm happy to entertain questions if you want to do that.
My name's Amy Baker, and technically Executive Director for Clatsop Behavioral Health Care, for the record. Chair Lee and Commissioners, thanks for this opportunity to present to you. I'm particularly excited about this project, in part because I am a child and family person at heart, and some of what we see now is that we have families who come through the child welfare system, and there are 2 critical issues in this community. One, substance abuse, including opioids, as well as housing. And those 2 issues in and of themselves end up preventing parents, and primarily mothers, from being able to be reunified with their kids. And as you know, for children, attachment is everything. I mean, attachment is so important. So having a program that both creates semi-permanent housing for families does a couple of wonderful things. 1, it reunites kids with their parents. 2, it creates a recovery support environment within the house. 3, one of the most motivating factors for families around getting clean and sober is doing it for their kids. And so being able to put all of those things together means that we have a program that's going to do just immensely important things for the population that we serve. And Clatsop Behavioral Health, we will both provide treatment services as well as recovery peer mentors, other moms who have been through it themselves. Like nobody has more credibility than somebody who has also been through the system. So thank you.
Good evening, Chair Lee and Commissioners. My name is Kate Allen. I reside at 318 Lincoln Street here in Astoria, and I've been working with Greater Oregon Behavioral Health as a consultant for about a year, trying to put together the nuts and bolts of this deal. So I'll give you a little bit of that nuts and bolts. As you see from the sheet that was handed out, we've done a little kind of high-level budget. This is a total project cost of about $358,000. Karen detailed some of the resources that will come into the community, both from Gobi and from Oregon Housing and Community Services to accomplish this project. We will primarily spend that money in creating nice, safe, clean, fresh 4 units, as well as doing a cleanup of a rather dilapidated looking little structure up on Agate Street. As was said, we have been through with Cameron and with other county staff, and we're all sort of nod and say, yes, there are good bones here. So there's a really great opportunity to leverage what is a county asset into an even bigger one for the community. We're working with local contractor Randy Stemper, who I think also had worked with Gobi on the previous project. He will be employing local people, and so we're sort of creating that opportunity as well through some economic investment. We hope to have all of our approvals, so starting with you. We're also, next week, we'll talk with the board of Northwest Oregon Housing Authority to secure project-based subsidies for the 4 units of housing that will be there. And then additionally, later in the month, talking to Oregon Housing and Community Services to get their final blessing. Once we've got all of those approvals, should be able to proceed to construction in June. And Mr. Stemper anticipates having a completion in the later fall. So our families, our new families will be in by winter. Karen mentioned briefly, we've got a little bit of a gap to close, that those construction costs, which are on the move all of the time, will be undertaking some local fundraising for about $20,000. And so you'll see some creative things that we'll be wanting to do, as well as talk with some of the local businesses around kind of getting behind the project and seeing some things that they might be able to help us with. As Karen said, Amy said, we're happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions from the board?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Sure. What a great project. It's very touching. It's very touching, especially the points about reuniting families and motivating. And I mean, it's just the foundational piece, and those early childhood experiences so critical. So good work. Just absolutely a delight. When I saw, and Serpa, I trust you, but when I saw that there was water damage, I immediately went to, is there mold? Are we putting you at risk? And so that's one question, is there mold? And the second one, if Gobi morphs into something, does this asset go with them, or does it revert to us? I mean, just trying to look down the road and anticipate unforeseen developments.
I can try to answer the last question. The reversion clause, as it's currently written, is really based on use and not on ownership. So, we could certainly look at that in the reversion clause, but the way it reads now is that if this is not used for this purpose for a certain period of time, the county would get it back.
I'm just looking to see that all the legal things are in a row and kind of nitpicking, just because it's me nature. So the mold thing.
Good, and I'll address your question about mold. We know that there are a number of conditions that really dictate that the rehab on the interior will be pretty much down to the walls. So anything that is an environmental or health concern would first of all be determined through the testing that we'll do before we take that on, and then anticipating, the budget that we have anticipates it's really going to be pretty fresh units with a lot of mitigation of anything that would be a health concern.
Healthy in every way.
Healthy in every way.
Thank you. Kate, are you saying fall of 2018 or 2019?
This year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Chair Lee, I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
I move that the board approve transferring this property to Greater Oregon Behavioral Health by adopting the resolution in order and authorize the chair to sign the deed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second that the board approves transferring this property to Greater Oregon Behavioral Health by adopting the resolution order and authorize the chair to sign the deed. Seen any further deliberations? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. It's great work.
Well done, well done.
Our next item tonight is providing a voter pamphlet for all elections. May I have the staff report, Cameron?
I think we've certainly talked about this a lot, so I just think it's up to the commissioners, to, and I think maybe at some point we might have to rescind the previous resolution. I'll have to defer to county council about that, but there was a resolution passed, I think back in 2000, by the board stopping the printing of voter pamphlets in the off-year elections. So. Based on previous discussions, we are in our budget planning process now, and so we are, planning for this expense for the 19 election, which would be in next year's budget. So the one thing we don't have a clear handle on, and we really won't know until it happens, is what the actual cost of the voter pamphlet will be. The reason for that is because it's based, the number of pages that have to be printed, et cetera, it's based on the number of ballot initiatives, the number of candidates. We won't know that until the elections happen. And so we think on the high side, we're probably looking at $30,000. And that would be a pretty robust election with lots of candidates, lots of things on the ballot. If we have less things on the ballot, obviously the printing of that would be a little bit smaller. There are some comments earlier about the special districts. We've reached out to the special districts, and I guess not surprisingly, we haven't heard from most of the smaller ones. Some of the larger ones said, sure, no problem. A couple of smaller ones we've heard from said, no, we won't participate. So it's kind of a mixed, and so this number in here also allows us to be in the position to pay the entire cost of the voter pamphlet if for some reason, special districts just choose not to participate.
All right, thank you for that staff report. Well, I've heard many great discussions for this, and I haven't really had anybody tell me not to do it. So if you have any questions for staff, go ahead and...
Chair Lee, I move to direct management to include funds for a voter pamphlet in the 2018-2019 Clatsop County budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further deliberations, Kathleen? Did you
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I certainly agree with the speakers today, and I appreciate them coming and talking on this very important issue. And I appreciate Cameron Moore telling us about that we may need to do a little research on if there was a resolution passed before, because I think this is important now and is going to be important in the future, and I think it's something our commission can be proud of getting back in motion. So I would support not only this motion, but also to look into it and see if we need to clean up that resolution and maybe get another one in front of us, if that's necessary.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to direct management to include funds for voter pamphlet in the 2018-19 Clatsop County budget. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Our next item is the item 6C, the county-wide housing study contract. Page 59. May I have the staff report, please?
Yeah, again, not a new topic, something we've talked about for quite some time now, probably a year or so. But there was some general agreement reached at the joint city-county meeting around a year ago that working together, housing was a critical issue. We should work together to take a look at that. There were a series of subsequent meetings with city councils around the county, and 5 of the cities said, yeah, we agree, we'd like to participate financially. So we basically have commitments for about $100,000 to do this study. $50,000 of that would come from the county. 10,000 each from Astoria, Warrenton, Gerhardt, Seaside, and Cannon Beach. So once we knew everybody was on board with this, we put together a steering committee to develop an RFP, issue the RFP, review proposals, and make a recommendation. Mayor Balanciefer was part of that, so he's here tonight. I'm sure if he has any comments, we'd welcome those. But we had a number of good proposals. We ended up, we had 2 finalists that we really liked. We did personal interviews with both of those finalist firms. And tonight, the recommendation is that we move forward with the contract with Johnson Economics to complete the comprehensive countywide housing study. I do want to be clear, the way this is worded is approval not to exceed $100,000. We have $100,000 committed to this. The price for this firm to do the work is about $74,000. But we want to have some extra funds available in case there's any additional work we might want to have them do during the course of the study. I think the committee agreed that that was probably a wise thing to do. So we may not spend the whole $100,000. Again, the contract with Johnson Economics is about $74,000.
Great. Yeah, we've been talking about this a while. You know, I was going to take an opportunity here. Our friend from Tillamook County, Commissioner Yamamoto, didn't you guys ask you a couple questions? You guys completed a housing study about a year ago, right?
We did an extensive study, yes, we did.
Very similar to what we're doing.
It is.
Yeah, and it's worked out well for you. It's given you good information.
Great information. Unfortunately, we weren't able to act on it, but I know we have distributed through AOC our housing study, and it's available online also.
Yeah, I've looked at it.
It'd be a good starting point for you. Yes.
Yeah, great, thanks. Commissioner Balanciefer, did you have anything to add? I know you're on the steering committee.
Sure. Chair Lee, Commissioners, I think this was really well thought out. There was a lot of debate about the selection of the vendor, the contractor. I will say that originally we'd interviewed 2. We weaned it down to a few, and then we interviewed 2, which dragged out the process a little bit, but I think actually ended up, the second interview was number 2 in everyone's minds, well, most people's minds, and when we interviewed the second one, it became a clear winner. The group that is doing it has had extensive experience in this area doing multiple other plans. So you're not pulling in somebody who's unfamiliar to the area. I think that's going to get you better value. Rural areas, particularly our area, especially with all the things that go into developing this area, make it kind of a special case. And so I thank you very much for ponying up the seed funds, the large amount of $50,000 to get this started. And Warrenton is extremely happy to be on board with this, and we look forward to the result. I think we learned some of the lessons from Tillamook County's study and tried to make sure that this RFP avoids maybe, or at least learns, I should say, from some of that so that we can make sure that we can act on whatever comes out of this. Thank you.
Any more questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sarah.
So a question was brought up about that Johnson Economics will rely on information that's volunteered from the cities. So does that mean that, are we to see that they're not going to dig down into the information on their own, or how's that going to work?
There's 2 reasons why that's in there. One reason is they wanted to make sure that they get any housing studies or any information that has already been done here locally, and some communities have done some work on this. So that's why it's included, that we would provide them, with any information we already have. They may also, they might have some unique questions that, through their particular data sources, they might not be able to answer, and they might come to us and say, okay, this is one we're having a hard time figuring out. Can you guys explain this unique aspect of Warrenton, as an example? So that it's mainly in there to make sure that we provide them with any work that we've already done on housing so they can build that in at the beginning.
So it doesn't mean they're not going to be doing their own work. It's just they want to include work that's already been done.
Yeah, I think when the steering committee started talking about this, we actually felt that was probably one of the most important things that would happen is for those communities that have already spent money or spent time and resources studying this issue, that doesn't get lost. Okay. That should be part of this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a few questions. One, following with what we're just saying, there was a 10-year study for Clatsop County on homelessness. Is that something that would be given to these folks to, you've seen that, I think I sent it to you, about what they see the needs are in this community. This was done in 2012, looking towards 2022. Are you familiar with that? Is that something that when you say that the other work that's been done, that they would include this?
The homeless study from 2010?
There's a Clatsop County, the end of homelessness. It's just, I'm just wondering when you're saying the other work that's already been done, is that something that will be given to them to look at? Because there was a lot of money spent on that too, and time, and.
If we can find it. I haven't seen that, so I'm not sure.
I can get you a copy. You can Google it. I sent you a copy. I just wondered if that's just information that can be put in there. Second of all, the out-of-pocket expenses, is there a limit to that? That's part of what you said, that we're not expecting to spend the whole 100,000. So that leaves room for, because in there it says that the out-of-pocket expenses are not part of this. At least that's my understanding of it.
I tell you, page 71, the reimbursables.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be, there's more than adequate funds there to pay for out-of-pocket expenses, and again, still leave some, extra dollars if we decide there's some specific add-on that we would like them to do in relationship to this study.
Okay, great. And then I like the suggestion there where the company is saying that they suggest that this information as we go along gets put on our website, and the city's website and the county's website. Are we set up to be able to do that? Because I think that's a fabulous idea.
Yeah, I think one of the things that actually we liked about both of the firms was they both had a pretty robust public engagement aspect to what they want to do. And so absolutely, we'll either have a separate website with that information, or we'll find a way to get that up on the county website.
Oh, that's great, because I think that's important. Underneath the housing inventory and forecast, one of the things I don't see on there, but I imagine it will be part of this, is the FEMA, in this area of earthquakes and tsunamis and flood zone and levees. That's all going to be part of as they look at this housing study, correct?
Yeah, it has to be, and I think the language in here that refers to that, where they talk about land uses, because land use sort of dictates where you can build. So they'll look at all the current land use, and frankly, they'll make some suggestions if they think there's something we could or should change.
Okay.
But the current land uses would tell us where housing could be built. So that's sort of where they start.
Okay, and then there's going to be a technical advisory committee. Do we know how that will be made up?
Not completely, although I think at the steering committee, I at least suggested that I hope the steering committee folks will continue to play a role in that, and I think they all said they would. We probably need to add some folks, probably need to expand that a little bit, but that'll be, once we get rolling with these folks, we'll talk about who needs to be a part of that and how do we get it formulated.
Well, that certainly makes sense to me. And then on the final page, it says that they hope to be done with tasks 1 through 4 in approximately 5 months. That sounds fabulous. Would they be starting from here now, and so by the end of the year we'll have some kind of study in front of us?
I think both consulting, the two finalists, I think they both had a similar time frame of about 6 months from start to finish. So once we get this contract signed, we can hit the start button, and hopefully, as I said, within 5 or 6 months, we'll have the results of this study.
And if I may, Commissioner Yamamoto, is there anything that you said that you had the study, you were happy with the study? I know I watched the video online, was very impressed with what they said, and you said that you weren't able to follow up. Is there anything that you could share with us that you learned about that we can look out for?
Yes. When I say there were things that we were not able to implement, we tried to implement a 1% construction excise tax to help fund this, and we got a lot of pushback, and at the very last minute, we got a petition to put it on the ballot, and the voters of Tillamook County voted it down.
Okay.
So we don't have that 1% construction excise tax to work with. However, all the work that we did with our housing study, There was so much buzz, not only in Tillamook County, but throughout the state of Oregon. We have had so many different companies approaching Tillamook County to develop workforce housing. In Nescoen, one of our most expensive communities on the south coast of Tillamook County, we have 6 homes currently under construction at a $250,000 price point. And that was put together by companies that saw the issue that we had in Tillamook County, and we were talking about it a lot, and they came in and they just started building homes at that price point. That is absolutely workforce housing pricing for Tillamook County. So even though we weren't able to get the construction excise tax to take advantage of that, there was such a buzz that was created in Tillamook County. We're seeing a lot of development of workforce housing in Tillamook County, which is really wonderful.
Well, another thing that study talked about that I thought was interesting was maintaining a price point, or I don't know how to say it, for that it stays that, like $250,000, for a lot of people, that's not affordable. And 10 years from now, it may be more affordable. But how do you keep those prices at a certain level? And that study that you folks did talk about that.
So you can put issues, you can put items within, depending on how it's funded. If the county, if Clatsop County were to help develop, help fund a development, you can place things in the deed that would make sure that home remains at a certain price point. For workforce housing for 10, 15, 20, 30 years before it were to Our issue in Tillamook County, just like I'm sure it's an issue in Clatsop County, the issue in workforce housing are the vacation rentals. Property is so expensive along the beach communities that people just cannot afford to purchase a home and make a living in Tillamook County or in Clatsop County. So those are the issues. You need to specify exactly how you're going to assist workforce housing in your community, and then place restrictions on that housing. We'll have restrictions. It can never be a vacation rental if it's going to be workforce housing and put together by the county. So you can place those restrictions within the deeds and make sure that it remains workforce housing and does not become a vacation rental.
Are you done? Could I ask him a question?
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Thank you so
I
much.
think Commissioner Thompson has a question.
Yes.
Just for you.
Alan.
So one of the things that I thought was most interesting, besides the impact of transient occupancy, vacation rental housing, you talked about the wage gap.
Yep.
So Commissioner Sullivan's question points to that. How do we narrow that wage gap so that people make enough money to be able to afford housing? How?
So I think in Tillamook County, we are approaching that a little differently than you are in Clatsop County. Our natural resource-based jobs in Tillamook County, that's where people can actually make a living wage. We're developing, so we were one of the last counties in the state of Oregon to develop a vacation rental tax. And we're developing that. I was on the original committee that put that tax into place. We had estimated $1.2 to $1.4 million a year coming in. Last year, we brought in over $3 million in that vacation rental tax. But we are finding that, unfortunately, hospitality-type jobs do not pay living wages. And so it's very difficult. So even though, yes, we're a coastal community, coastal county, and we have lots of tourism, tourism to us at least is not a means to get people to get living wage jobs, and that is a problem. That's why we are really concentrating on our natural resource-based economies, commercial fishing, timber, dairy industries. That's where the living wage jobs really are, at least to us, to Tillamook County.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner. Do you have more questions, or? Because I have more.
Thank you for your interest very much.
You have another question?
I have of course I have other questions. Thank you.
Me?
I think not for you, though.
Thank you very
sir.
much.
Thank you.
It's great to have an expert from outside in the House. When I'm looking on page 66 of our packet, and I'm looking at the housing inventory and forecast, and this is a key segment of this. There were things we didn't anticipate, and I know no consultant, no matter how skilled, can anticipate something like the impact of the internet and transient occupancy, the Travel Oregon advertising dollars, and the impact on our housing stock. Nobody saw that coming. We had no experience with that. And I don't know how we stay nimble and responsive to those currently unforeseen circumstances. But that, to make a flexible, adaptive system as we look at housing, maybe we can consider that, we commissioners can consider that. I'm going to talk at the AOC Housing Subcommittee about that, because I think that's what we have to look at. I think your point about the wage gap and what it takes to have stable, adequate income that's essential for families and to be able to afford housing is critical. One thing I'm thinking of, and I'm sure you have this experience in Tillamook County, how to measure the transient workforce. You know, the stories that I'm sure we've all heard about people living in cars, people living, I want to say extra legally. I mean, more people packed into apartments or houses than meet building codes just to have some place to live. How do we measure that? And I don't know how we get at that. I mean, the federal census tries. Did the steering committee look at that? I wasn't included in that, so I don't know. Did the steering committee look at kind of the underrepresented of the poorest of the workforce? Because their housing needs are so significant. The community action team met, and they were talking about, in terms of getting people who have been homeless back into housing, is that people have lost the capacity to live in a dwelling. They can't do self-care in a dwelling because they've been outside homeless for so long. And I'm reminded of the fragility of human beings and our skill set. So I'm kind of thinking out past the edges. I don't know how far this study will go, how far it can reasonably be expected to go. But I'm more and more aware of how fragile we are and how our systems are crumbling and the impact on people. It's kind of a long question, but you understand what I'm pointing to?
Kind of, but that would really be a separate and different kind of study than what this is. So, and I think what you're talking about is a homeless study. I mean, where are they? Where do they come from? Where do they go?
Except there are, if I can just intercede, there are homeless people who are working. I mean, I think that's my point. There are people really balancing, teetering on the edge and falling into homelessness and still working, who haven't given up, that we may be able to reclaim and make it easier to keep them integrated into the social fabric. And so I'm just wondering about the scope of it.
Yeah, this may address that a little bit, because obviously they're going to look at who's here now, what are they doing, what are they doing to work, and what types of incomes do they have, and what, barriers does that income present to housing in the current market, and then give us some recommendations about how we might reduce or eliminate those barriers. So yeah, potentially that could help that population.
Good. I hope that's there, because a stitch in time saves nine, right? I mean, prevention is always cheaper than remediation. And if we can keep people constructively functioning, we're going to be better off. End of that point. I looked on page 71. Professional time for court appearances and depositions will be billed at 150% of existing hourly rates. Holy cow. I assume that's boilerplate and nothing we're anticipating?
No, that's boilerplate language.
Okay, good. All right, I'm happy about that. I did notice that the cost, when I looked at the cost, they said $45 on page 71 again. Hard copy reports, if desired, will be billed at $45 per report. That seems excessive to me. Do we know why? I mean, and long distance telephone charges, I mean, I don't know, my cell phone plan includes those, and, delivery charges I can see. I saw a big possibility for outside professional services for consumer research, which includes subcontract resident, that whole item, incentive fees, focus group facility rental, computer tabulation, miscellaneous out-of-pocket expenses. Who's keeping an eye on all of that? The $45 report, that still concerns me. Long distance telephone charges, some concern, but what about the outside professional services?
Well, again, that's what the Technical Advisory Committee would do. They would direct the work of the consultant. If the consultant felt that there was some need in order to get to some information or an answer that they needed, they would seek authorization and provide us with a cost estimate, and we'd say either yes, we want you to incur that cost, or no, we don't think it's necessary.
Okay, well, that makes sense to me. So I just want to say on the record that housing has been a passion of mine. I work on it in this county and regionally and at the state. So I want to sit on and participate with the steering committee, the technical advisory committee, in order to provide maximum benefit to the people of Clatsop County. So I wish to be included. I have not been, and I wish to be included going forward.
Chair Lee, I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve the services agreement with Johnson Economics for a county-wide comprehensive housing study and authorize the county manager to sign.
Second.
We have a motion to second to approve the services agreement with Johnson Economics for a countywide comprehensive housing study and authorize the county manager to sign.
Point of order.
deliberations?
Yeah, point of order. Am I to be included or not on this technical advisory committee? I need to know that before I vote. On the steering committee and the technical advisory committee.
Probably will want at least one representative of the commission, yeah. So I don't know if anybody else has an interest, but we haven't gotten to that point yet, so we haven't started formulating it. So
I wish to be designated as that person. My vote is contingent on that.
Maybe we should bring this up in a timely manner when it comes due, in case.
Well, I think it just
Someone
might be
else
helpful
interest?
for us to have at least initial discussion with the consultant. I'd be curious to see what they recommend in terms of, who they feel should be represented based on their experience in other communities. So, I guess I'd like to hear from them who they think would be not the best individuals, but what interests should be represented, how large this thing should be, and, that type of thing. So I actually think it would be beneficial for us to wait, maybe take this up at the next meeting or maybe in a month or so, once we have some conversations with them.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any further deliberations? Seeing no further deliberations, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed?
I abstain based on the lack of assurance that my skills, my experience, my commitment will be able to provide maximum benefit to the people of Clatsop County.
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 1 abstention. Thank you. We're going to move on to our final business agenda item today, and this is the Council of Forest Trustlands Counties membership. Commissioner Sullivan and I have brought this before the board. I served for many years on the Council of Forest Trustlands, and Commissioner Sullivan has taken over my duties and has done a great job. And in our conversations with each other, we really feel that we're not being served by this Council of Forest Trustlands board. That's been my view for many years. There's arguments that say, folks, that we're losing some sort of the seat at the table. The reality is that since the Forest Trustlands counties have signed on to the lawsuit, they have basically specifically been told that there is no conversation going on concerning. So basically, the Lynn County lawsuit has taken the county voice out of the planning process, except for Clatsop County, because Clatsop County did not join the lawsuit, and so we have been and can stay in direct communication with the Board of Forestry about changes to the forest management plan. The board has been trying to get a forest management plan together for 10 years, and they haven't been able to do that. And now, until this lawsuit is going to go on for years, it's going to go all the way to the Oregon Supreme Court probably, and during this whole time, the Council of Forest Trustlands is basically hands are tied. And so it's my belief that why would we spend money on a board that's not even really functioning and it basically doesn't promote the values of Clatsop County. And this is one of the reasons I think that we're wasting taxpayers' dollars to pay our dues. That doesn't mean that Commissioner Sullivan is going to be going to go to these meetings if they are held, and she also attends every Board of Forestry meeting. So we do have a seat at the table, and we're not giving up a seat at the table because right now there isn't a seat at the table as concerned, as far as I can see. And just the fact that we are not in the Land County lawsuit, we can have a conversation with the Board of Forestry and give input to the new forest management plan, which the Board of Forestry is moving forward on. So these are some of the reasons why I have brought this forward, and I'd like to hand the table over to Commissioner Sullivan if she has anything to add to this.
Well, I think I appreciate the people that came in and talked to us about this issue today. I know that this whole timber is never an easy conversation, and it hasn't been, and it won't continue to be. I mean, since it's begun, it's been a complex conversation. But by one thing that I think that was brought up that I think needs to be cleared up is that Clatsop County has a permanent seat on the Forest Trust Land Advisory Committee, and that is by Oregon State statute. And we are on that committee if we pay these dues or not. And I intend to go to the FTLIC meetings if they're held, and I believe we're going to have one held in April. Liz Dent is going to be coming and giving us her input on what she's talking about, the forest management plan. And then the Board of Forestry, which I believe I think it's May, I'll be going to that one also. So we do have a seat at the table. We're not going to lose our seat at the table. We have a permanent seat at the table. These dues that have been, and the conflict with Clatsop County and the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties has been that for at least the last 15 years, Clatsop County really has not been given its due. It's been marginalized, it's been discounted, it hasn't been listened to. And so the decision today to stop payment of the membership dues for the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties is being made to protect the interests of the Clatsop County residents and out of respect to the Clatsop County taxpayers. Clatsop County has been clear that we believe in a balanced forest plan, that forests are for revenue generation and habitat protection and recreation. These values are not being represented by the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties. This has been true for more than 15 years. Our dues are used to actively promote single use of our forests, and this is not acceptable. So that's why I support withdrawing our fees. Now, another thing that I wanted to also say is that this is a subcommittee of the Association of Oregon Counties. We still belong to the Association of Oregon Counties. There are dues that are paid to that. This is a subcommittee that deals with the Forest Trust Land Committees. And so we still have our voice, and we can still participate in the Association of Oregon Counties. And I know that in this past year when I went to County College, I have great respect for Commissioner Yamamoto and the other commissioners that I've met and the work that the AOC does. But in this instance, I think we need to make I think we need to do this move.
Yeah. This is interesting. This is an article from 2003, okay, where 3 out of the 2 commissioners requested to not pay $14,800 to the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties to retain attorney. And so this is not something new. The county has deliberated on this before, has withheld funds to the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties for some of the same reasons that that Commissioner Sullivan just brought out. So this isn't some new precedent. This is from May 29, 2003. So, we've been talking about timber policies here for a long time. I think this sends a good message that Clatsop County is going in a different direction than the Lynn County lawsuit and the folks that signed up for it. So this is why I support it. And that's why I hope that I'd like to see a motion supporting this and a vote by the commission.
Are you interested in more discussion, or do you want to see the motion first?
If there wants to be some more discussion, you're welcome to ask a question.
Well, District 5, the district that it's now my privilege to represent, stretches from the ocean to the Columbia County line and down to the Tillamook County line, takes in a bunch of beachfront. Commissioner Neberger and I share Seaside, goes up into, District 5 goes up into Fishhawk Lake. A lot of folks in the natural resources industry live in that district. Other people who have different ideas also live in District 5. So what I'm faced with is the need that I see for me to represent all of the people in my district, to be a representative of the varying points of view, is that I'm required to listen to all of those varying points of view. So before we take the action that says we know Clatsop County's interests, for me, I need to have us listen so that we can hear what people of differing points of view from all over the spectrum have to say about what they see as Clatsop County's interests, because there's more than one point of view. And I think good people can have differing points of view. I think we can work those differences out, but we have to take the time to talk to each other, to listen to each other, to find common ground, and to go forward together. So I'm sitting in the building that's named for Judge Guy Boyington, who established the Council of Forest Trust Lands, and my mother's phrase keeps ringing through my head. We're from Michigan, right? Mom's phrases. Judge Guy Boyington is spitting in his grave right now. So that's what's in my head. I would like to have us ask in a very welcoming public discussion, what are the varying points of view of Clatsop County's interests? Because I don't think we've done that, at least not to my satisfaction or the satisfaction of the people that I'm representing. So I would be way more comfortable if we could have an open, inclusive, welcoming public process to discuss this very important issue. Because my hope, my dream, my intention is that if we listen to each other, if we have those welcoming conversations, we'll be able to find a common ground. And in that way, we'll be able to inspire finding common ground, not only among Clatsop County folk, but in the Council of Forest Trust Land counties, and maybe all across the state of Oregon. Because you didn't mention that for a couple of years, I also went to the Board of Forestry and the Council of Forest Trust Lands, Chair Lee, but I listened to those discussions too. There's an abyss between the points of view. I mean, the need for listening to each other with respect and affection to collaborate effectively to solve the issues that are facing us. We can be leaders in that. So I hope we continue Judge Boyington's tradition of being leaders that inspire the whole rest of Oregon on forestry issues. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. I don't think the Lynn County lawsuit serves any of those purposes. Commissioner Sullivan?
Well, I think what I think is unfortunate is when they put this issue of Clatsop County's viewpoint as if we are anti-timber company or anti-timber revenue. That's not true. It's never been true. I mean, I fully understand the importance of the jobs that the Hampton Company provides our county. And I fully understand the money that we get from timber revenue that supports our special districts in our county. We'd be fools to say that that's not important. Of course that's important. I don't think anybody up here doubts that that's important. But that's not what this is about. This is about the fact that there's other values in the forests and our timber company. recreation, habitat conservation. And in the last years, the message that's coming out of this subcommittee, the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties, and the way they spend their money is not towards this balanced plan. It simply is not. And we are saying when we follow that, we are going against our interests that we believe that in a balanced forest management plan. And believe me, this forest management plan is not just listening to counties. They're listening to a wide variety of stakeholders. We are but one of the stakeholders in this topic. And the people in this room know that this forest management plan has been ongoing for a long time. It is a tough battle. I don't know when it'll be solved. But the message that we want to say, that we have not been listened to. We should not continue to throw our taxpayer money into this committee that uses it for PR against our issues. That's what it's about. We are still going to get timber revenue. They are still out in the forest cutting right now, and they will continue doing that, and we will continue getting revenue from our share of the Clatsop Forest. That's not what this is about. This is about the fact that we are an important part of this committee, and we have been ignored for almost 15 years. Enough is enough. I make a motion that we withdraw our membership fees. I think it's written here that vote to withdraw the CFTLIC and provide the required 90-day notice. And I agree with you, Commissioner Thompson, that we need to, it's very important that we continue our conversation. I can't support that enough, that of course we all need to keep talking. And I think that we have been talking. I continue to hear in the community the support for the Lynn County lawsuit and how proud they are that we went there, that we have shown our leadership on this issue, you know. And at the same time, I'm continue to be proud that Hampton Industries are here with us. I'm very happy that they're here. I'm happy to see Doug Cooper down at the Forestry Board. You know, it's fabulous. We all have to work together. But sometimes you have to make a point, and this is what I believe that we're doing tonight.
Chair Lee, I have a question regarding...
Hold on. I think Commissioner Sullivan, did you make a motion, correct? Commissioner Sullivan made a motion to, could you restate your motion, please?
Oh, boy, okay.
It's right here.
I make a motion to vote to withdraw from the CFTLC and provide the required 90 days notice.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Withdraw is that the withdraw from the, would it be the fees or just withdraw?
Withdraw from the CTLC and provide the required 90-day notice. Is that your motion? Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. We have a motion to second to withdraw from the CFTLC and provide the required 90-day notice. Is there any further deliberation?
Yes.
Commissioner Clement?
Yes, regarding the second to last and the third to last paragraphs that you wrote.
Yeah.
I have a question. Am I clear that if the counties that joined the Lynn County lawsuit now do not have direct communication with the Board of Forestry about changes to the forest management plan?
That's exactly right.
That's correct.
Basically, all of the plaintiffs, all of the other 14 counties that signed up with the Lynn County lawsuit have been directed by the attorney, DiLorenzo, to have no conversation with the Board of Forestry. And we are the only county that can have input right now on the forest management plan. So the reality of the situation is the other counties don't have a voice and we do. And this is...
and that's coming from DiLorenzo, which is the attorney that came to speak with us, that is in charge of the Lynn County
started
lawsuit.
the Lynn County lawsuit. And so the reality is that Mr. DiLorenzo has told the Forest Trust Lands counties to not communicate with the Board of Forestry because of this lawsuit. So this lawsuit's going to go on for the next 3, 4, 5 years. It's going to go all the way to the Oregon Supreme Court. And these counties don't have any input on the forest management plan, but we do.
For the next 3 to 5 years.
Absolutely.
However long
or
it
until
takes.
whatever. And the state's in my
I think
opinion,
3 to 5 years is optimistic.
in my opinion, the state will never, ever, this is Oregonians suing Oregonians. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. Where's this magical money supposed to come from? Is it going to come, it's coming out of the Oregon taxpayer's pocket. The Board of Forestry has already spent $1 million.
Over $1 million.
Over $1 million fighting against this lawsuit. And there's going to be millions more of Oregon's taxpayers' dollars. And if, in some weird world that doesn't exist, in my opinion, they somehow win this, where is that money going to come from?
Do the counties that pulled out, do the counties that opted in have an opportunity to pull out at any time?
No, we only have one chance to opt out of this lawsuit.
So they're in now and they're in?
They're in for good, and we're out for good. Yeah. And I still stand by that decision that we made, and I thought it was the right decision. I still think it's the right decision. And I also think that us removing ourselves from this, and I think what Commissioner Sullivan said was very clear. They haven't really represented, they never represented the interests of Clatsop County the entire time I served on that board.
And we can go back in and pay our dues should we see that this is a better way.
Yeah, so they're not, CFTLC is not going to say, well, you're out, so you can't come back in.
Well, we can, it's a public meeting, we can go to every meeting.
But we have they will grant us the ability to pay the dues.
If we want.
If we want, and go back in.
That's right. And a year from now, if another board wants to go and they want to join back up,
Okay.
that's fine, they can do that.
Okay.
So, but it's my opinion that this time this is the best way to move forward. And so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further deliberations? Okay, we have a motion and a second to withdraw from the CTLFC and provide the required 90-day notice. Seeing no more further deliberations, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you. Okay. Now we go on to commissioners' reports. Commissioner Thompson.
You're not going to give me time to recover after that emotional moment?
Okay, do you want me to start over here?
Start over there.
Okay,
Thank you.
Commissioner Nebeker.
Sure. Let's see. So, one thing I wanted to ask before I give my report, something that I read in the New York Times. Have we developed a formal cybersecurity policy and like a written strategy to recover from breaches? Based on what just happened, what we've just learned, what happened in Atlanta.
Yes, we do, and might have been 3 months ago, we actually had an outside expert come in and assess our cybersecurity, and he said you guys are pretty close to an A+. So
Wonderful.
does not mean something won't happen,
Yeah.
but it does mean we've got lots of protections in place to make sure that it doesn't.
That's great. I read that same article, Commissioner. I was going to, it was the same thing. What kind of robust, what level are we on? A+ sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, one of the other things we've been doing the last couple of years is we've actually purchased a number of servers. So we have like triple backup of all of our data. If it goes down, we can go to another location, not physically in some cases, or physically in some cases, and pull up all that data, everything we're already working on, and we shouldn't lose more than maybe 15 minutes of information if we had a catastrophic failure.
Atlanta lost 5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Great, that's very reassuring, as reassured as we can be, given what's going on in the world about technology and hackers and so forth. Okay, I attended the Arts Council meeting. Kevin Ridgway from Oregon Coast Business Association attended to brief the council on public art and grants for public art. $73,000 in private funding has been raised for public art in Warrenton, as there is no public art there. Several projects called Art Trails are planned for the next few years for arts projects along the Oregon coast through the Oregon Coast Business Association. The goal is to provide public art that can be viewed 24/7 in every community. Those communities without 24/7 viewable public art can be grant funded. Plans are underway for creating a logo for the Arts Council. artist studio tour is being planned for July. I attended the all-day sequential intercept mapping or SIM meeting on mental health to identify areas where there are gaps in our systems, where people with mental health issues fall away or slip through the cracks between agencies. The purpose is to streamline, better serve the mentally ill, and save resources through improved intersection within and between agencies by increased communication and possible increased funding. Some background I found interesting: half of all national prison population is due to substance abuse. Oregon leads the nation in abuse of painkillers, with prescription drug abuse 39% higher than the national average. 37% of adults in the U.S. do not get help, and that's across the board for mental health. 25% of adults have mental health problems. That's 1 out of 4 people in the country. And 37% of that quarter do not get help or did not get help. 50% of the prison population have mental health problems, and 70% of juveniles. That's our future. That's juveniles who are incarcerated. These mental health issues create repeat offenders after they are released. Mixing the high offenders with low offenders while incarcerated increases crime overall due to the high offenders teaching criminal behaviors to the others. The goal is to prevent crime, reduce recidivism, increase quality of life. In the general population, 1 of 5 people will experience mental health illness in their lifetime. ACEs, I know we've talked about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, is the key to understanding, as through early assessment, early help in mental illness dramatically reduces negative impact on family, individuals, and community. All agencies represented at this SIMS workshop now have increased access and eligibility for grants. So that's a really good outcome. Then I attended the Human Services Council. There's 3 openings on the Human Services Council, but only 1 person has applied. We need more people. Advocates and professionals in healthcare are especially needed. So if you know of anyone that might be willing or interested. Also minorities who can represent their community. Someone who is contracted with the county cannot be part of the council. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Clement.
County Council has sent us an email late this afternoon regarding the DLCD decision to not give weight to OPEC about when implementing rules for the territorial sea plan. And Lincoln County has drafted a letter and asked us to sign. The letter asked that DLCD give weight to OPEC when implementing the rules of the territorial sea plan. I propose we join in support of that letter. And they need it, pretty timely. It looks like they would like the approval to be sent, to send the letter on behalf of all the coastal counties by April 15th.
Yeah, I'd like to, by consensus, move that we direct staff to sign on to that letter unless there's some concerns of the commissioners. And could you make any clarification on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the plaintiff in that suit is Mr. Yamamoto, and he's here tonight. So if you'd like to hear more about the suit, I
Please
ask
come
you to
forward,
stay in
Mr. Commissioner Yamamoto.
You can give the details. I think you had to
opportune that you chose to join us tonight.
I'm just getting wrangled into all of these discussions, my goodness. So I am a co-petitioner in an appeal against the Department of Land Conservation and Development concerning the Territorial Sea Plan Part 5 amendment process. And this has been going on for so many years. So over a dozen years ago, Oregon coastal counties were being inundated with nascent ocean energy companies wanting leases off of the ocean to place their ocean energy devices. And at that point in time, we had no regulations at all in place to support that type of an industry. So OPAC was put together, or they were already together. They developed the very first territorial sea plan. And the territorial sea is the first 3 nautical miles from the coast out into the ocean. That's what the state of Oregon has control over. OPAC was tasked with trying to come up with some sort of regulations for this nascent ocean energy industry. I was a member of TESPAC, the Territorial Sea Plan Advisory Committee, and this was a committee an advisory committee set up by LCDC, Land Conservation Development Commission, in order to advise them. And this was just a long involved process. I was one of the very few members of either OPAC or TESPAC, which was completely volunteer. I spent hundreds of hours going to meetings, and I literally drove thousands of miles to Florence and Eugene and Portland and Astoria and Salem over the years as a member of the TESPAC committee. We went to LCDC in December of 2012, a 2-day hearing. We met for 2 days, and at the very end, LCDC told both OPAC and TESPAC, thank you so much for all of your hard work and effort, but we have decided instead to go our own way and accept the staff report. Very disheartening it was. So we decided that we needed to appeal this decision. At the same time, we developed an amicus brief. And we knew that all the coastal counties didn't have the wherewithal, the money to develop an amicus brief. So Lincoln County developed an amicus brief that coastal counties could sign on to. We were extremely fortunate. All 7 coastal counties, including Clatsop County, signed on to this amicus brief. And that did carry a lot of weight at the Court of Appeals. This was a long process. Our lawsuit went on for 5 years. 3 weeks ago, we finally got a decision from the Oregon Court of Appeals, and we were upheld. And not just a little bit. They completely invalidated the Part 5 amendment adoption that LCDC did in January of 2013. So now the point is, where does the state go from here? And we don't know. The state has been proven that they were wrong, but at the same time, that leaves us without all of the hard work that was done, that leaves us without a way forward. What if ocean energy companies were now to approach the state of Oregon? We don't feel that is going to happen. It is still a very nascent industry, and there is no activity. We talked to Chris Castelli at Department of State Lands and asked, are there any indications that any ocean energy companies have any interest in Oregon, in the Oregon Territorial Sea at this point? And the answer is absolutely not. So it's not a big issue, but now that we're looking towards the state to figure out exactly what their next step is going to be, David Allen, who is our attorney in this, is asking the coastal counties again to sign on, and let's make sure that the state does the right thing at this point. And so I think that's what we're asking for. I have not actually read that letter that you received today. But we had a presentation from David Allen and Scott McMullen, actually, at our Board of Commissioner meeting this morning. And so we're reveling in a great victory. You can sue the state and you can win, but at the same time, the next step is where does the state go from here? And so we're trying to get all of our ducks in a row. This is going to be one of the steps, and we would, since you were already a party to the amicus brief, we would very much appreciate if all the coastal counties, again, would just, and this is what you can do if you stick together. And all 7 coastal counties had a huge impact in the Oregon Court of Appeals. So again, I wasn't planning on being here to discuss this issue, but it was brought up, and I appreciate very much you adding me to the conversation, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah,
Sure.
I worked with, I'm the chair of the Oregon Coastal Zone Management Association, and David Allen's on our board, and he's
Correct.
just worked tirelessly to promote this, and it's been great to work with him. And so, excellent. Thank you for that report.
Sure.
Is there any more questions for staff on this, Kathleen?
Well, one, I know that coastal wave energy, through the years, I've heard Representative Boone talk a lot about that. Where does she come down on this?
Well, so Representative Boone was one that was very much in support of the Territorial Sea Plan as it was adopted by DLCD. And people think that at this point, because I was a co-petitioner in the appeal, that I am against the idea of ocean energy, and that's absolutely not the case. It just needs to be done with wide open eyes and with the input of coastal residents, because that is who it's going to affect. There is something in Oregon called, that we're very proud of, we call it the Oregon Way, where residents of the state of Oregon get to weigh in on what happens. And we did that. Both OPAC and TESPAC worked, again, thousands of hours putting this together, and the state decided that they were not going to accept either recommendation and instead go their own way. So it was just an abrogation of the Oregon Way, and that's why we prevailed. I feel strongly that's why we prevailed. But again, Debbie Boone was one that was very much in support of the adoption of the Territorial Sea Plan as it was adopted by LCDC back in 2013. But she and I get along extremely well. We have our differences, just like we have differences on many different topics. But I know that she supports this because this was an abrogation of the Oregon Way.
So what are exactly that are we being asked to do?
To sign on to the letter that asks to have OPAC included in the discussion of implementing the Territorial Sea Plan.
So they won, you appealed to the
Oregon Court of Appeals.
And won.
And won.
So that means that you're back to the drawing board on this?
No. So what we're intimating is that
because I haven't had a chance to read the letter yet.
The OPAC recommendation met all Goal 19 standards, and that was proved out in the court decision. So there is no reason that the original recommendation from OPAC back in 2012 could not just be adopted by LCDC and made law. That also proves that in 2 more years, we're supposed to be revisiting the Territorial Sea Plan Part 5 amendment process. So for LCDC to now adopt the original OPAC recommendation and we take another look at it 2 years from now, just makes a lot of sense to everybody. Starting over again, I mean, we spent so many years on developing this process. Starting over again does not seem to make sense.
So all the work that you did, you came up with a plan. Yes. The state said no. You appealed it. Yes. And the appeal court said, that's not such a bad plan. So what you're saying now is let's take that plan that everybody worked on. Yes. And carry that forward for the law of the day.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to be very honest with you, the plan that the state adopted, 90% of that plan was in complete agreement with the OPAC and the TESPAC recommendations. There were just a few major issues that the state wanted to have their own way. And again, when the OPAC recommendation meets all Goal 19 standards, now that the state has been proven wrong in a court of law, there's no reason for the state not to adopt the original OPAC recommendation.
Great. So Commissioner Clement, so by consensus, we're good to go on that. So staff, let's go ahead and sign on that letter. And thank you again, Commissioner, for your help.
Thank you for.
We may ask you to come in.
Thank you for having me again.
Thank you. And please continue with your report.
Just one more thing. There's a trail run, a 10K at the Clatsop County Fort Clatsop Trail this Saturday, March 31st at 9 a.m. And you just need an annual pass, or you can get an annual pass that day if you want to run it. So the 10K is open to runners only. And I think there's a walk too, so it's a good way to get out before you have Easter dinner. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you. Some of you may or may not know that April is a National Child Abuse Prevention Month. And I know that because I called CASA today to find out how much money they raised, because I went to the 20th annual Clatsop CASA celebration at the Bridgewater Bistro March 15th. And Senator Bessie Johnson, who you all know is so wonderful at getting money at these events, did the Raise the Paddle portion, and there were several, from the community, there were several matching funds. And that evening, they raised over $20,000. And then, as always with these fundraiser events, More money comes in, they gather everything up. And so totally for that event, they raised just over $35,000. And I know that, that we're all grateful for the work that CASA does, and I know that CASA is very proud to be part of such a generous community that we continue to show here in Clatsop County, so good on them. Friday, the 16th, I went, attended with Sarah, with Commissioner Nebaker about the Sims meeting. I think it was very impressive to see all of those different stakeholders in the room, the lawmakers, the elected officials, people from the local hospitals, and people that work with mental health issues. And I think we did a really good job, and I think the facilitator did fabulous. I'd like to see us get back together in 6 months to talk about that. I think last time I talked about going down to the Tillamook Forestry Center last St. Patrick's Day and participated in a panel with some Lewis and Clark students. It was fun to get back in front of students again. On the 21st, I attended a Seaside lecture down in Seaside at the Seaside Library about the marbled murrelet, which has just recently been uplisted. The person who spoke was Kim Nelson, and she has spent, I think, over 20 years studying that bird. Interesting little bird. I attended the Rally for Our Lives this past Saturday. And one thing that I'm excited about on that issue is to see young people have their voices heard and come together as a group. I'm really proud of the young people in our country, and I hope they continue to work on what they feel is important. Congresswoman Bonamici is going to have a town hall meeting March 29th, which is tomorrow, 6 to 7 at the Astoria High School. And then, speaking still in politics, the AAUW will have a candidate forum Tuesday, April 3rd at 7 p.m. at the Astoria High School. I will be attending the remembrance of the Martin Luther King Jr. at the Grace Episcopal Church, April 4th at 7 p.m. And then the other thing that I'm really trying to get people out to is the Lower Columbia Estuary Conference. It's held here every 2 years. It's a professional conference. They deal with scientists that are dealing with ocean issues, estuary issues, river issues, fish issues. This is the up-to-date information. I'm not saying it's easy because I'm not a scientist, and I try to glean as much as I can from that, but I did learn a lot the last time, and they are offering a local rate if you have Clatsop County or Pacific County identification. I would love to see students there. I would love to see local fishermen there. I would love to see the producers of the fish processors there. The topics the cover is going to explore the community resilience under shifting environmental conditions. If you're interested, Carla Cole is, you can contact me. You can also contact Carla Cole. You can also go onto the Columbia Estuary. They have a website, and there's a phone number you can talk to. So, and I think that's it for me. So I appreciate all the hard work that we did today, and I hope you all have a happy Easter.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Thompson.
Happy Easter or happy April Fool, same day. So I'm reminded of the fragility of human life. My husband and I both faced some health challenges. I'm exceedingly grateful for the kind thoughts and prayers from so many people. I'm sure that plays a huge part, so thanks for that. I have 3 friends right now from Cannon Beach, Astoria, and Elsie Vine Maple who are in hospice and being maintained not only by hospice but by members of their families and communities. And so life is fragile. It's good to be kind to each other. So I was focused on other personal issues for a while. Monday, the community action team met, and of course we always talk about Head Start and housing and programs to deal with homeless and utility support, ways to get people out of poverty and to empower them to function well to the highest capacity. I was really struck at hearing how quickly people can lose their capacity to function inside houses. Somehow I'd never got that before. So more and more important to keep people in housing to maintain their capacity. Yesterday, Cedar, we talk about economic development. Mayor Ballensiefer shown talking about opportunity zones and enterprise zones, because what we're looking at is the long-term economic viability of this area, building our tax base, building families, stable, adequate income. And that's essential for well-being in oh so many ways, for abuse, violence, everything you can think of, schools, jails, everything we need to pay for, everything we need to be able to do depends on a good tax base. John Muir is the one who said that economic development and conservation go hand in hand. So I believe that. Then I got to go to the Red Cross and we talked about staffing, how to staff emergency shelters. And you'll be happy to know that our Red Cross staffer says we are A+ as well, that she trusts us to be able to cope with anything that happens. I hope she's right. Tomorrow, the Board of Property Tax Appeals meets. For the third year, I'm chairing that. It's a wonderful primer in Oregon tax law, which is confusing at best. Shout out to the staff again, who does such an excellent job in performing their job professionally, logically, and so clearly that we can deal with people's emotional and financial issues as they come before that body. And tomorrow night, the Congresswoman Bonamici, but then on Saturday, Senator Johnson and Representative Boone are coming to Seaside City Hall, and they'll be talking to us. They'll be doing a wrap-up, and it's always a good road show when Senator Johnson and Representative Boone are in the House, and that's it. I'm just looking forward to the idea that we will work collaboratively together to develop solutions about housing and environmentally sustainable economic development and community resilience that's economic and helps us deal with catastrophic events. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have nothing to report today. County Manager Moore.
Actually, just a couple of quick updates. As of today, we have hired a human resource director. We're expecting that that start date, however, won't be until May 21st. Lastly, I know we had lots of discussion about this over a year ago, but we're basically pretty much at the end of the preschool feasibility study. There's going to be a meeting to deliver final recommendations. This will be with the school superintendents in Clatsop County on April 12th. What I'm hoping is at some point after that, we will have hopefully all, but at least some of the superintendents from Clatsop County come and kind of share with you why this was a really important thing for them to go through, what they learned, frankly, how grateful they are that the county performed as kind of a conduit to be able to bring this federal money in, to be able to do this kind of analysis. So I would just say stay tuned for that. I'm hoping to get them at one of the April meetings, and if not, we'll try to have them here in May.
Great. All right, the meeting's adjourned. Mayor, I have a document for you. Thank you.
Is it just me or is it freezing?
My statement to the paper and a statement that I wrote. Kind of clarifies my feelings about the Lynn County lawsuit. Kind of helps you maybe get some idea where I'm at. You feel free to follow up on any questions.
Yeah, well, because you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's Ralph doing?
I'm glad you were canned. Yeah.
That's when I start feeling better.
Well, but then it was...
Yeah, you know.
You and I, it's the FEMA and
the
flood overlay.
We're going to be fine with that one. Lots of
Yeah, I know you are. So, it's going to be.
So when would that take place?
April 27th.
The room is packed.
Well, I think it...
Yeah, so,
It's robotic, it's
not a choice we really have.
Their blockage or something?
Yeah, if you want insurance. I think for us, it's a messaging thing. And that's why I kind of wanted to chat with you a little about it, because I think we need to make sure we're clear that, people need to be able to have this insurance. And we're just kind of having to rubber stamp this federal rule. And, and that's where, a lot of people don't understand it.
Well, let us know. Good luck.
You'll know.
Oh, thank you. And I don't know if you had a chance to see that email that I sent, sent from NACO. It's about the Stepping Up program. And they're going to have some national kind of.
It's very clear to me. I think
you get screwed.
And it was the paper, the article in the paper, I think what Mr. Francis, Commissioner Sheriff Francis said, kind of articulated, and hopefully people are starting to get the message. But I think it's important for you and I to kind of really message that.
So, I mean, I know that you're interested, and it seems like a good program. So, maybe we can look at that. It's like coming up in May. I just want you to. It's fun.
I had a feeling that was more of a team. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's your job. No, I agree totally. We hashed that out 5 years ago. But yeah, thank you for coming. It's important that you can go back with some good information, because I think the most important takeaway here is the decision we made is that we are actually the only county that really has an opportunity to have a conversation with the Board of Forestry. I think that's the point the lawsuit is sidelined
Sarah, do you,
all these other counties from talking, basically. They can't even talk to the board for anything. And so that's the message here. I will say that I think the other counties did not expect that would come out like this, where, that they would be sidelined, and the Board of Forestry is moving forward with the forest management plan. Now, all the other counties, and we're the only county that can talk. So, I think that's the silver lining, if there is lack of a better analogy.
And I think one of the biggest problems we have brought up there's a bunch of different things right now. And then a school to be. And they're all going to be in big succession. Just tepid response on the jailer.
I think so, but I forgot. The little recorder thingy. So can we be able to transcribe it to? I was kind of panicking.
Are continuing to, have harvest levels that, that's not what this.
Percent of the state's forest is cut here.
Yeah. Johnson County is going to be still the leader in timber harvest and production in the state. This isn't what this is about. This is about basically Oregonians suing Oregonians. It's ridiculous. So hopefully, I just kind of like. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.